I knew as early as February 2020 that I needed to do something.
I recognized that there was a systematic problem and that this was not about hydroxychloroquine, it was something larger.
Fear shut the world down, and people made a lot of money at it as they were killing us.
I was asked to speak at a freedom rally that was set up to discredit my reputation.
Whoever orchestrated this must not have the safety of this nation in mind.
Medicine and politics should be separated. These doctors were handcuffed.
The American public has awakened. We have a new civil rights movement to restore our rights, and we're going to hold them accountable.
It is a natural progression of a man of God or woman of character to see injustice, to seek it out, and then to act upon it.
Do you hear me? We will never lock down again. This is the hill we die on.
Don't miss New American Heroes with attorney Warner Mendenhall and John Davidson, Mondays on BrokenTruth.tv.
Good morning if you're in California. It's another lovely California day. And then good afternoon if you're in the Eastern Coast. And good afternoon to you, Warner.
Good afternoon. Nice to see you again.
You too. So, you know what? There's been so much that's gone on this week, but this week we have Greg Yacoubian and his clients, Janine Bedard and Mike Parks, who both work for LAPD and lost their jobs, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Right. Well, I want to get into this a little bit because everything that came out in the last week is really important. And
so let's do it. Let's get them in here.
People who made the decisions to not take the shot were absolutely right. They're being proven right every day with more and more evidence. And finally, the DNA contamination issue came before the FDA this week, and I was happy to see that with the advisory panel. And I think that's just a critical component of this. They created a shot that we don't know what the dosing is. We don't know how it affects individuals. It goes throughout the body. And now we know, I think everybody should know, that there's DNA contamination that looks like it's persistent in people and it's showing up in cancer. So you guys who are here today with us, I mean, I don't know anybody who fought the shot and the mandates that regrets it at this point. I mean, even if they lost their jobs, even if they had horrific economic consequences, they do not regret not taking that shot, and they do not regret standing firm and saying no, and they do not regret not complying. And Greg, thank you for all your service in your public service, and then as an attorney representing safety forces. It's much appreciated by our communities out here. And I'd like you to, just describe briefly your background and how this case came to you.
Thank you, Warner and John, and thank you for having us. God bless you for the work you're doing, and also for having my clients, Janine and Mike here. My background briefly, again, the story obviously is not about me, it's about what my clients have been through. But my background is I am technically still with the department, but I did retire as a lieutenant, police lieutenant, after about 26 years of active service, and I stayed on as a reserve. But I went through law school while I was on the job back in the late 90s, going into the early 2000s, and long story about how that even happened, but that was never my life's plan. In fact, ironically, I always, from my earliest memories, just wanted to be a medical doctor. That didn't happen, but that's for another time. In any event, I went through law school part-time. I did retire from active service and then went into full-time practice, was invited a few years later by the union to go into full-time defense work, which I accepted. It was a very gracious offer. And I feel like it at this point, it certainly is my calling on my life. And that's primarily what I do, almost exclusively police and fire, public service defense. And when this issue of the mandates came on the horizon, it's important to understand the context that the case that came to my office at the time through the collective bargaining unit, the union, I really had zero. In fact, I had absolutely no contact with the folks that were coming to me prior to the department's decision to terminate. It's important to understand that, and we'll talk about more about that in a minute. But the officers, as they'll explain to you, the whole COVID thing came on the landscape in about March-ish of 2020. There was an executive order issued by the mayor for the emergency conditions as he saw them to be. All of my clients, before they were my clients even, they were working under these conditions for about 18 months. Then in about August of, in fact, August, I think the exact date was August 2021, is when the mandate was actually imposed per the ordinance, and the actual language in the ordinance 187-134 provided for medical or religious exemptions as an option, and it did require, is important, did require that the applicants or people who didn't get the vaccine, really, as it's called, vaccine, we would agree it's not in a traditional sense a vaccine in any event. But the jab, that material into your body, and the issue was that they were to test while on duty, and then they would get the testing at the city expense. And the city did, as a side note, negotiate a contract, a sole source contract, is what I understand it to be, with one of the commissioners, one of the entities within the city. In any event, shortly after that, there was a unilaterally imposed condition of employment, and it's a little bit of collective bargaining profiling that was happening there, kind of a side issue. But regardless, this new condition event within about a month and a half was imposed. The union did actually sue in late October regarding the collective bargaining issues under the government code, non-compliance with that, some issues of conflicts of interest. And as a kind of a last legal issues they raised was that the unilaterally imposed requirements, they had actually two specific issues there. One was that the officers that had that were needed to be tested had to pay for the testing, actually reimburse the city. And I say reimburse again in air quotes, because the city was paying for the testing, or at least they advanced these costs. And this was about $561 a month. It was a significant chunk. And they also had to test while off duty, which both of those provisions, you're probably familiar with your state, probably has very similar provisions. Patently illegal under the labor code, at least that was what the union was, their position was, and that was certainly my position. So, and then if the officers, they refused to sign, they were summarily fired, outright clear due process violations. There was no, they had to sign this document within about 48 hours. They had no representation, and then they were summarily terminated, which again violates the charter and several other provisions. So by the time these officers came to me, when I was looking at this, I thought, well, this is going to be relatively easy because, we have clear labor code violation, of clear due process. And there's a California case, Skelly, dealing with, ironically, a doctor, but side issue, and had to do with what the state recognized in California minimum due process requirements. And what they did to all my clients, it didn't even come close. So we go to the boards. With the Board of Rights is the administrative disciplinary process. And I had several. Janine and Mike are now kind of the front runners. And the way things kind of shook out, the long story, but the way they came to me was not in this order. In other words, Janine was not my first client. And most of these folks, like Mike as an example, Mike Parks, he was not a prior client. In fact, he had a different attorney before he came to my office for the Board of Rights. But what I learned pretty quickly was that there was a lot of political pressure that was being placed on attorneys in my office as well for certain outcomes. And I can talk about that a little bit if needed. But the bottom line is, I have an ethical obligation to my clients. and I did my job. So we went through these cases. There was, I should say, there was one Board of Rights, because I had several, but one of them, the very last one, we actually prevailed on at the Board of Rights. I can't get too much into the details, but I will tell you, we did prevail on that one. That particular individual went back to work, and that didn't change anything because the other officers that were terminated were terminated. And we went to we took writs on these terminations. We were batting 1,000 actually on the writs as far as being granted writ of mandates for the due process violations. However, the Writs and Receivers Department there in Los Angeles at Stanley Mosque, they have really 3 departments, and they were all pretty much lockstep in that even though the courts found that there were due process violations, they interpreted this one particular case a little bit after Skelly as restricting the remedy. So they would grant back pay and benefits, but they would not reinstate. So we took writs in all of these, or I'm sorry, we took appeals in all of these writs because they were granting, we're the prevailing party. And there was one notable, interesting twist. This was Mike Park's case, and Mike can talk about this more if he chooses. But in Mike's case, this is October 22, 2023. I still remember this. I was driving to court, and I received some information that the tentative on Mike's case was granting the writ, in fact, reinstating him. So we got to court, and short story is the judge in that particular department had just replaced a judge who'd retired, and we got there. So I think this judge was still kind of figuring out, what the context was for what he was doing. But short story was the city attorney that was there at the time misrepresented the facts of what had actually occurred. And that judge took it under submission. And this is what's really, really interesting and kind of bizarre. This is on October 22nd, 2023. Takes it under submission. We filed basically it was an ex parte. We were looking to augment the record with a piece, just an email. Say, hey, Your Honor, this is the truth about this issue. It's outside the record, but you need to know this. So in that 7-day period, a case came down. It was Krug. Was the name of the case, Krug. And it essentially took the facts of this particular case in Krug, and there was an opinion, an appellate court opinion, that essentially held that one of the labor code sections we were dealing with did not apply to public employees, but the context was remarkably different from what we were dealing with. So short story on that was when we came back, we had a couple of other procedural issues that occurred, but subsequently in that case, the judge flipped on that and then denied Mike Park's writ. And we took the appeal. And then in that other interim period after the writ was denied, Krug was then, I'll say, overturned. There was another case kind of relating to the same basic legal issue. So that got remanded back, went up to the California Supreme Court. Krug was remanded, and essentially in that interim period, it was vacated. So we were briefing the appeal on Mike Park's case. By the time we finished briefing it, I know, right? Krug came back, and they essentially affirmed, but on a different basis. So that Warren, I know you appreciate this because I'm sure you're thinking, wow. We actually have presently a writ, a petition for review that Mike Parks has pending, was just filed about a week ago before the California Supreme Court. And I know this is a little bit out of order, but now backing up in time with Janine's case, all this Krug stuff was not in play when Janine's case was going up. So Janine's case went up, and again, that preceded Mike Parks a little bit. And in Janine's case, the Court of Appeal simply didn't rule on the labor code. So we took that to the California Supreme Court for a petition for review. And we also did a petition for rehearing at the appellate court, but they were summarily denied. So Janine's petition for a writ of certiorari that's pending for the United States Supreme Court, that's set actually for the conference on the 29th, coming up here pretty quick. I think it's later this week. I'm sorry, week from today, I believe. That's what Janine's case pertains to: is does a litigant have a process, a federal due process right to have state courts rule on the application of substantive state law? So as a matter, again, of a federal due process. That's the context for both of those petitions that are pending. So with that, I'll entertain questions.
Okay. And I know, for our audience, this is going to sound like, incredibly convoluted process, but it is. I mean, that's the problem. Cases are coming down constantly that affect ongoing litigation, and you better be aware of those. I mean, I've learned that the hard way in the past, not under the COVID crisis, but you show up at court, you better know what's been decided in the week before you show up in court for your argument, for example. What do you think the chances are with Janine's case with the Supreme Court? Why do you think the Supreme Court would be interested in this?
So, as I'm sure you know, and probably I'm sure most of the vast majority of your audience knows, very, very rarely is a writ of certiorari granted, like on the order of 1%, maybe 2%. I think this case, with the level of attention that the overall context of the mandate has had nationally, I'm hoping that, and I have, tried to promulgate and get out the word regarding this case. And I got to tell you, thank you so much for having us on. But just to the extent that anybody looking at this case would go, wait a minute, this litigant came to court, regardless of what the context is. And you'll note, I appreciate, some of the discussion we had about mRNA and Tylenol and some of these other things. These cases, all my cases really had nothing to do with the medical issues. That's adjacent to what we're dealing with. We're just talking about a person who is doing their job, a public safety officer, and they are then presented with this new condition of employment as a tenured employee, and then they're summarily fired. So to answer your question, I hope that somebody during the conference will look at this and go, Sergeant Bedard is contextually stellar employee working as working in a coveted assignment, no discipline, and then presented with this issue, and this has come up before, by the way, regarding a litigant having a right to have a ruling. So we included that in. I don't know if you had a chance to review the petition that I provided before, but yeah, thank you. We talk about that. This has come up before, and the Ninth Circuit has looked at this, and it's something that hopefully I'm praying that somebody will look at this and go, this is worth ruling on, because we have public safety employees, and it is a gigantic segment of the employment population here in California, and it affects a lot of people, and I'm hoping somebody during this conference go, we got to correct this issue. We need to send a message that state courts have to rule when they're asked about application of substantive, specifically labor code issues.
Yeah. Well, that's enough of us lawyers. Let's talk to your clients a little bit. John, you want to take the lead on that?
Yeah. Well, I just want to follow up with one thing. You said that you received political pressure to ensure that the cases had a specific outcome. Is that correct?
Yes.
Was that from the judiciary, or was it from actual just politicians?
I guess you can qualify them as politicians of sorts. I will say this. Let me put it this way. Janine and Mike can certainly chat about this, because, like Warner said, probably enough from the lawyers, but they can fill you in a little bit on that. But I'll tell you this: the interesting pressures that were coming, it didn't change what I did. I mean, I'm fine. I haven't missed a meal. So if my source of clients was gonna be interfered with, that was not going to affect what I was going to do. There were people internally, within the landscape of people that were involved with the the issue that we're dealing with, that we're looking for specific outcomes, and we're really looking at this like, you know what, they should have just gone along. They should have just, taken the jab. What's the big deal? In even if that was your position, I don't think that they understood. And I was pushing back with, look, what happened here is wrong, regardless of what you think of the treatment or the jab, vaccine, however it's framed. But there were those pressures, and I did get a sense that the judges were being pressured. And I'll share this with you. In fact, I think I can say this safely because this is not an attorney-client issue. I did have discussions with city attorneys, and I reminded them, look, you all are in the same camp. You don't want to be sawing off the branch you're sitting on. And I used that exact analogy because they were creating, cases and case law potentially that was going to affect them. Right. So some of them and by the way, there are a lot of good people there. I participate in one particular group. I won't mention what it is, but with the city attorneys, I have regular contact with them as friends, and I hold many of them out as friends, and they're good people. But a couple of them are really ideologically driven. And I was trying to convince them, look, you got to understand that if you're looking for an outcome here, first of all, ethically, morally, I'm bound to take care of my clients, and I'm going to do it over my dead body. But even if that wasn't the case, you have a personal vested interest in looking at these issues and make sure you get what you're looking for here, but it may not be what you want in the long run.
Yeah, well, let's talk to Janine and Mike a little bit about some of this pressure that you had. Janine, do you want to start? What did you go through when you filed your case?
Sure. First of all, good morning, John. Good morning, Warner. And, from the bottom of my heart, we're in 2025. I would just like to say thank you so much for continuing to bring up this issue, continuing to fight, and not being afraid. Unfortunately, we have a lot of people beginning in 2020 that were fearful. They also didn't believe that we were going to be where we are in 2025. Nobody believed it. I didn't believe it. I had no problem thinking, I didn't even think the masks were coming, much less where I'm at today. So thank you again, John and Warner, for doing what you're doing, for not being afraid, for continuing to fight. There's a lot of people that cannot fight. They don't have the means. They don't have the wherewithal. They don't know where to go and know what to do. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. That being said, yes, 24 years with the Los Angeles Police Department. I was a sergeant at the time that this occurred. My husband served 30 and a half years as a sergeant as well. He had just retired prior to this wonderful pandemic. And I, realized when this was put before me, I need to make a decision. And the decision, like Warner had mentioned, do I really want to inject my body with something that nobody knew? We already had at that time the information that it did not stop the transmission, that it did not prevent the disease. We already knew that there was a lot of adverse reactions out there. So I had to make a choice, and I did. I made the choice not to get vaccinated. They held that against me right from the chute. And I felt a lot of pressure from my commanding officers, a lot of pressure from officers in general. We were pretty split. You would think in law enforcement, we would be like all together and standing together. But unfortunately, like Greg mentioned, there are ideologues and they unfortunately believe something that has been told or programmed, since birth. And I did too at some point. I wasn't really an anti-vaxxer, but I did start questioning once I actually started doing my own research, and I actually started doing a deeper dive. And I was shocked. I was shocked to see that there's just a lot of nonsense that's being put out to people that we're just supposed to eat up because they're not doing their own research. I've been listening to congressional hearings, and they're not even doing a deep dive. But They expect the regular people, right, that are busy, that are trying to raise a family, that are trying to get through this economy, to actually do all of this research. And that doesn't happen. So they just hope that we close our eyes and we say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. So there's a few of us that did not say yes sir, yes ma'am, and yeah, it was pretty bad. We like I said, we were pressured to do it. We were told, "Oh my gosh, you're a safety risk. You're going to be out there." First and foremost, I was in a position. I was in my own office, so I was not in the street. I was not contacting people as they were trying to put, oh, you're going to be contacting the public, you're going to be at risk. No, I'm in my own office. I went along with the wear the mask when you're in an elevator, just because I needed to kind of go along to get along for a little bit with my actual coworkers. I did want to show a little bit of respect and not just throw everything up in the air and you start a fire and right then and there. But as time progressed, they even noticed, and you could see a lot of them weren't wearing their mask. A lot of them were just kind of going, "Oh, it's a lot of theater," just like you see with our Congress. They'll put the mask on and then they'll take it off. So that occurred a lot through this time. And when that paper was pushed in front of me, the illegal notice, as we call it, in November of 2021, which, like Greg said, you sign it, and if you don't sign it, you're terminated. And you don't get really any representation. They give you supposedly 5 days to respond. Well, when I looked at the document and Greg saw it, the chief had already signed to send me to a board of rights anyway. So his mind was made up. The chief of police was not going to have it, because if he had people that were standing up and questioning, then he knew he was going to have some problems on his hand. So he was trying to get rid of the few that did stand up. And that's what occurred. We were sent to a board of rights. And at that time, our union, funny enough, was actually fighting the same battle. And I was happy. I was like, okay, at least we have some representation in our police union. And they realized, wait, you guys can't just all of a sudden change their condition of employment. You were already offering in this first ordinance that you put out in August of 2021 that you were going to pay for their testing, that you were going to allow them to test on duty. You were doing all of this for the benefit and for their safety. Now, Sergeant Janine Bedard says, no, she's not going to get vaccinated. Now you're forcing her to pay for her testing. You're forcing her to do it off duty. You're forcing her to, jump through hoops just because she said no. I was still going to follow along. They asked for an exemption, medical or religious, but I still had to pay for testing. So regardless if I submitted a religious or medical exemption, I would have still had to pay for testing. So this is what I was trying to explain to my commander and my chief at the time. You are putting something illegal in front of us, regardless if I submit to what you're asking and put in a religious exemption or a medical exemption, you are still doing something illegal. And as police officers, if we don't stand up, who's going to stand up, right? So at that point, I said, you know what? I will not sign. If what you need to do is terminate me, go ahead, because that's what I'm going to be at least showing people. Some of us can stand up. One person can make a difference. We already know that. But some of us can stand up. We can be the example, and we can show people what we need to do. Because if not, what's going to happen the next time? They're going to do the same thing. They're already trying. Go ahead, Warner. I see what you're...
Yeah, I'm just coming off mic because I'm always curious. What do you think in your life allowed you to be able to stand up? Because I know many people wanted to, but really felt handicapped that they could not. So what allowed you to do that?
Well, as much as you will let me talk about my faith, I will say during this time, most of us all did the same thing. We started looking inside and we started saying, wait a second, what are we going to do? I'm a mother of 4 daughters. Am I going to teach my daughter, hey, go ahead and do what they're telling you to do just to get a paycheck, just to be able to get along with coworkers, just to be able to promote? Yeah, I wanted to promote to lieutenant, maybe captain, but was it worth it? And for me, it wasn't worth it because I already saw how things were going, how quickly people turned on each other, how quickly everybody just became hateful towards one another. And that really, really scared me. So I turned back to God. I was raised Catholic all my life, but of course we step away, especially in law enforcement. You just get busy and you're doing everything and you're not really, you're kind of just going to church when you're supposed to go to church. Like my mom says, you're only going when you're during Christmas or something. So I started reading the Bible again. I started finding my faith. I started getting surrounded with a good group of people, Mike Parks included. And we started realizing, hey, if we are not the voice now, who is going to do it? like we can say, oh, someone else will do it for us. But no, how am I going to teach my daughters? How am I going to be an example to them that they need to stand up? I told my daughters, and I gave them a very vulgar example, so I won't say it on air, but but I said, if you get cornered in in an office by a boss and he asks you to do something for your job, are you going to do it? And I said, it's a little extreme, but that's how I felt in this situation, because it was injecting a poison into my body to keep my job after 24 years. And from 2020 to November of 2021, I was fine. We were doing our job. We were, 6 feet apart. We were wearing our masks. But all of a sudden, this piece of paper put in front of us in November of 2021, do or die. Janine, it's do or die. You have to.
Yeah.
I asked what changed. They couldn't explain it. It was like Greg said, it was the pressure for the chiefs and the commanders. I asked my commander, I said, why would you push an illegal notice, in front of people? Oh, Janine, you know how it is. I mean, it comes from the mayor. And if we don't agree, then, they're just going to replace the chief. They're just going to replace all of us. We have to do it. Just get vaccinated. It's not bad. My wife's a nurse. So I asked him, I said, have you read theirs? Like, have you seen the adverse reactions? Do you understand that this isn't just a blanket, everything's going to be okay? And for him at that time, he was head in the sand. He had no qualms about saying how great it was. Oh no, it stops the transmission. It stops the disease. You will not affect other people. Just get it, Janine. It's fine. So I couldn't get through to him. But for me, it was my faith. It was my family. It was my daughters. It was being an example and wanting to do more in this world. I can't just sit back anymore. And I'm so eager to continue to fight. That's why I thank both of you. Oh yeah. So if you need fighters, we're here, because we're not gonna stand in the sidelines anymore.
Well, I think it's an unheralded story that there are actually millions and millions of people who left their jobs over these mandates. So we know it's millions of people that had faith, whose families backed them up, who stepped off the ledge here in terms of their economic security and everything else. And, I am just so, I think they're unheralded. I mean, there's, certainly there's people who've emerged and have gotten a lot of public attention, but it's these unheralded workers who just stood up everywhere that they've really brought change. I mean, I don't want to go into the stories that I know there, but huge changes have resulted from these millions of people over time.
Warner, I will tell you this one more thing. Being the supervisor doing that, because that was just uncalled for. Oh my gosh, you can't do that. You can't be a sergeant of police and go against the chief of police. What are you doing? So that to me though, actually opened so much for people that were not in a supervisor position, because they didn't know who to call, and their captains, their sergeants, their commanders, their lieutenant, whoever, were not fighting for them. So I got all the phone calls, and that really kept me going as well, because you have the regular officer that has 2, 3, 4, 5 years on, right? They're scared. They have to feed their family. They have to pay their mortgage. They have to, pay their car insurance. They didn't know what to do. So I guided them legally. Obviously I couldn't, because I'm not an attorney. I told them what I was going to do to help fight, but I told them, do what you need to do for yourself and your family. Some continued, but they didn't get the vaccine. They just, went along with putting the exemption and getting charged for testing, which Greg will probably go into. The union won July 13th of 2022, and they did not charge anymore for testing, because the court found that it was illegal to test. Now, it didn't get a full-blown, I guess Greg will go into it, it didn't get a full-blown actual ruling, but it was a behind-the-door, closed-door deal, I guess. They said, okay, we're not going to charge for testing anymore. So that was the other silly thing. It was like, we went through all of that. I told you the same thing, don't charge for testing. We'll still submit. We'll still, put in an exemption if that's what you need on paper, but do not sit here and try to act like it wasn't illegal. And if we don't want to put a poison in our body, we should be allowed not to put a poison in our body. So yeah, it's family for sure. My husband has been 110% behind me. And I think without him, I probably wouldn't be here today. I'll be honest with you, my husband and my children. And Greg, you've been amazing, and I appreciate you every day of my life. So thank you so much. If you have any other questions, let me know.
I've got all kinds of questions. I don't think
should we get Mike in here?
Questions. Yeah, let's get Mike in here.
Mike,
can I just make one quick comment?
Sure.
Yeah, so I apologize, Mike. Sorry about that. I did want to just thank you, by the way, Janine, for those very nice comments. One qualifier, just only because it's significant. Janine mentioned about the procedural issue about the ruling on July 13. There actually was a ruling. Judge Birdsong did rule. What happened was there was, normally there's this period of time where there can be objections when there's the statement of decisions drafted. And the judge did specifically order a writ of mandate to issue. What happened next, and Warner, I'm sure you'll appreciate this, going back to political pressures and some of the, things that were happening in the background, I think in the hallways, if you will, smoke-filled back rooms, I think. But in any event, the statement of decision was issued on September 30th of 2023. But then there was a settlement and everything went away, and they left all my clients basically twisting in the wind, and without the writ of mandate being issued. So there actually is, and this is all very thoroughly pleaded in our papers. And I'll tell you as a side note, just real quick.
I want to tell the audience what a writ of mandate does. It orders a government body or official to do their duty, and they've been shirking their duty. So it's an order for them to act in a proper way. Some of the audience is not going to know that necessarily, but a writ of mandate or a writ of mandamus, that's what that does. There's a duty for them to do something, and you have to go to court to force them to do it.
Right. So they again, the union settled without addressing my clients that were still, all their cases were pending. And there was, separately, although I probably should hold off on talking about, the stuff that was happening to, the pressures in my office, but there were issues that were raised that I had to separately litigate that were later settled favorably, and they had these really defaming statements that were retracted. But I guess we could, if needed, we could talk about that. So just wanted to get back to Mike as quickly as possible. But that one ruling issue I think need to be clarified.
Great, Mike.
Yes, sir.
So Mike, explain your situation, why you brought forward your suit. I mean, obviously very similar, but what was your motivation to fight back?
Yes, sir. First, just like Janina, I just wanted to echo the same feelings. Unfortunately, our voices have not got as far as I wish they could have got. And we greatly appreciate both of you guys allowing us a platform to be able to speak and share our stories. Because I think there's, as you guys put out, I think there's millions of people that have gone through something similar. And I pray for all of them. I hope they're all doing well. But I know, just like you guys have spoken, that we all feel the same way, that we all did the right thing, and I wouldn't change it for anything. You could tell me 5 years ago, hey, you'd still be fired, and you wouldn't get your job back, and you'd have to go through all the financial difficulties and everything that you've had to go through. I wouldn't change a thing. I really wouldn't. I grew up in a law enforcement family. My dad did 36 years with the LAPD. It was all I ever wanted to do, is be a cop and try to help people. I truly believe that it's a calling, and that going out there and protecting people and doing the right thing is a great way to spend your life. And then 2020 happened. They came and said, hey, we have this virus, and we're going to have to do all these things. And a lot of the officers that I worked with were scared to death. They really were. They were terrified of the virus. They were afraid to go out in the field. I was working detectives at the time. I was working sexual assaults. And I remember distinctly a few of the detectives that were afraid to work the field because they were afraid that, what if I got the virus? What about my family? All these kind of things. And I remember, because I was one of the younger officers up there working detectives, that I was like, I'll do it. I'll do it for you. I'll go work any of the testing sites, or they're assigning us to grocery stores and all those kind of things. Like, if you guys don't want to go out there, I'll step up and do it, because I'm younger and I should be fine. And my wife was a sergeant. She is a sergeant with LAPD currently. And then I did that for a year and a half. And I actually tested positive at some point. I think it was in 2021, in the summer of 2021. I was off for 10 days and came back. And for me personally, I mean, I know everyone has different experiences. It wasn't more than a cold for me. I came back and I thought, oh, okay, at least, that all that stuff's behind me. I can, we can continue on with our career and doing what I enjoy doing. And then all of a sudden, September comes and they say, hey, you have to declare your status. You got to tell us whether you're vaccinated or not. And I was like, well, it seems crazy to me, but I was like, I took it to the last day. It was really weighing heavily on my heart. And then I was like, all right, fine. Here, you want my status? I'll send the email just as you guys described and declare my status to the station IOD coordinator, which is basically a medical liaison officer for each station. And so I said, hey, I'm unvaccinated. I contracted the virus back in the summertime, and I don't see a need to get the vaccine. And so she accepted my email. She responded back, said, oh yeah, we got your vaccination status. And then a month later, they said, okay, you have to submit an exemption by the end of the month. And so I thought about it a lot with my wife, and we prayed on it. And obviously, I have religious convictions, and so I was like, you know what? I'm not afraid to share my faith. I'll share my faith with anyone. And so I drafted a religious exemption. I submitted it. They accepted it, and I was like, okay, it's over with. We're done. I declared my status. I provided them with an exemption. This is it. And at that time, the ordinance was already out. We had a copy of it. It said, oh yeah, you just had to test, and it would be on duty, and then it would be covered. The testing would be provided by the department at no cost. And then they changed the rules again. They came back and said, a month later, hey, by the way, that testing that we said was going to be on the department's time and at the expense of the department, that's actually not going to be that way. It's going to be on your time, and it's going to be at your expense. And I was like, wait a minute. I was like, so you're telling me for me and my wife to both continue to work for the department, you want $1,000 a month from us in test? I was like, that's crazy. First of all, it's ludicrous.
Did I miss something here? Was that ordinance actually amended, or was there just
no?
Okay, what the
no?
Heck? I right. I wasn't sure.
No,
yeah,
no. Yeah. That's a big deal, by the way. I don't want to cut into Mike's time here, but Mike probably wants to redeem his time. But if John, we could chat about that more, Warner.
All right, we'll come back. We'll come back to that.
Yes. It's a big legal issue.
Warner, this whole experience has been one of the most blatantly illegal things that I've ever seen or witnessed. I couldn't believe it when it happened. When they sit here and say, hey, here's our city ordinance. It's law. It carries the weight of law. And then they turn around and violate it with a contract. And it's a contract. I mean, you can read it. It's clear as day. It says, hey, I authorize the city of Los Angeles to deduct my check this amount of money twice a week for testing. That's what it says. And it says, oh, you have this section option. If you choose, you can be invoiced for that testing, but you're still accepting an invoice, which is a bill, and a bill is you're basically accepting that you're going to pay it. And so I wrote right on the bottom of the form, I said, listen, I don't authorize automatic deductions or invoicing. I don't authorize it. I'm not gonna do it. And that was it for them. They served me with the paperwork 2 days before Christmas, and on Christmas Eve I was relieved of duty and sent home without pay. It was I couldn't believe it when it happened, and I for the last 3 years I keep thinking this is something that's going to get corrected. It's got this can't. There's no way this is going to stand, but it's kept going.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Both of you have sort of referenced faith in this. Do you believe that perhaps the LAPD had a bias against religious beliefs?
You can answer that first if you want, Mike.
You want to answer them, Gene?
No. Go ahead. You go first.
Sir, I think you almost can't help but come to that conclusion. I think when you have a group of people, and I was part of a group of, I worked at a station called 77th Division. And we had a group of individuals who were not participating with the vaccine stuff. And I was actually helping to coordinate that group of individuals. And it was a pretty substantial group of officers. I mean, it was like, I think at the station we have roughly 400 officers, and it was like 140 officers or so that were all not participating. And I ended up being the figurehead by this group. I didn't ask to be. They came to my desk and said, hey, Mike, we need you to run this group and, coordinate and help everyone, get religious exemptions filed and help them with the paperwork and all that kind of stuff. And so I ended up being that figurehead to help the station. And unfortunately, as Janine and a couple of anyone that became somebody who was helping to lead that group of individuals, they made a very swift example of us. And so I can't help but have any other belief than that, John, that's the reason why they ended up going after a large group of us.
I want to mention a book. Some years ago, I read a book called Live Not by Lies. And it talks about how people survived the oppressive communist system. I think it's focused on Poland, if I remember correctly. But I mean, the key issues there were faith and family. If you had faith and family, you could kind of, in your effort to keep that intact, people survived horrendous abuse and torture because they had faith and because they had family. And I really feel that that's the lesson you guys are both telling us again here in the American context, which I can't even believe this is what we're discussing. But, the strength of the family, and I think I start to look at national issues much differently now, that there really has been a huge attack on families. And faith, I think, is getting actually, revived in this country right now, partly because of what we've been through. Just a comment there. Live not by lies.
I completely agree with you, Warner. I think family is faith and family are the two most important things that we have in our life. And in going through this, I don't think I would have been able to make it through this 4 years without my faith and my family. I actually was fired 10 days before my first child was born, William. And my wife actually attended my board of rights hearing, and she was sitting right behind me at our board of rights, and she was 9 months pregnant. She was out to here. I mean, she was ready to give birth any day. And they actually went after my wife and tried to give her a 10-day suspension for refusing to wear a mask for 8 hours while she was sitting behind me at our board of rights hearing. I couldn't believe it. And it was unheard of. They didn't do that to any other officers in the department. Not one other officer did they give her a 10-day suspension for refusing to wear a mask. But because she was my wife and because she supported me, they went after her as well. And it's mind-boggling that we accepted this and we think that what happened was okay, because it's not okay.
Sounds like this is a whole other lawsuit.
Yeah. There's been, John, I'm just going to jump in really, really quick because I know Mike's going to have to take a second for that one. But you have to understand the crazy thing that we're not even jumping into in depth because we have to be careful, obviously. There are many, many, many officers on that department that were able to quietly say, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to get vaccinated. I'm not going to put an exemption. And they slid under the radar for different reasons. That's the scary part, because they are literally in court calling us almost insurrectionists, basically, and saying that we were just going to contaminate the city of Los Angeles and we were the worst people and we didn't care about anybody. What they didn't realize, not just the police department, the fire department, I'm sure you know all the cases that the fire department's been going through, and every other entity and department within the city. I mean, it is a joke and a half how crazy they handled this. And like Mike said, I mean, our police union, I'm not here to completely bash them, but they left us just high and dry. Once they got their ruling, we went to them, me specifically, went to them at least a couple times asking, hey, can you help me with legal fees? I can't afford all of this. I paid 24 years as a member to my police union, and I was denied twice. I asked, can you please give me an email detailing why you're going to deny my request? No, it's been a unanimous decision through the board. We're not going to, help you with any legal fees. So that's another mess and another lawsuit could happen, right? But these are things that I believe you asked the question about, did they come after us or for faith purposes? I believe there's a little bit of that because there's evil in this world, unfortunately. And we have a lot of leadership in the city of LA that is focused on money and power. So you can see that a mile away. And don't get me started with the state, but
you have to live here to get that joke, I guess.
Yeah. But within the city of Los Angeles itself, just the bias, the disregard, like Mike said, his wife's 9 months pregnant, going after her. They did all this during the holidays. We're not victims here, though. We made the decision. We stood tall, and we're still going to continue to fight. But our police union, no good, no care in the world. They're doing their things for themselves. And I understand that they're, like we talked about, politically, if they went against the mayor, we already knew. We knew what was going to happen. They needed to get stuff done. They needed money for what they needed. You stand up against the mayor, and whatever, I guess she says, don't get me started on her, but that's a whole nother story. They are afraid. And what I was trying to get to was, yes, faith, I think, could be a factor that they, just didn't believe in what we believed. But I also believe that they are fearful. They're fearful of anything because they don't have the faith. So like Warner was saying, the faith is coming back. There's a huge revival, obviously, what's been going on in this world, but they don't have the faith to stand up. So they are afraid. So they're easily manipulated, easily programmed, easily buy into all of the nonsense because they think, oh my gosh, all of the things of this world are going to go away. My house, my money, I'm going to have to live in a car. I can't pay this. No. They have to understand, if you have the faith, God will provide. It's going to be scary. This was not easy. Mike will tell you. I mean, all of us, everyone, the millions that stood up, we lost a lot of things. We are in a lot of debt. We were afraid of I didn't miss a meal, so I'm not going to play victim, but I'm also going to say that it's been hard, and it's still hard in 2025. It is still hard, but that just makes me want to fight even more, because when you're making it hard for people, and I'm in a position, because I have an amazing husband, to be able to continue to fight. But the people that aren't married or don't have the financial backing, I'm here for them, and I want to continue to fight for them, as does Mike and Greg.
Even though we're mediated through this video, your guys' energy is just shining through. I got to tell you that. Your brows aren't furrowed. You've got easy smiles. I mean, I really.
We know who has us. We know who has us.
Well,
and you see the glint in your eyes. Even it's coming through the video. But I just. Your message is really, really powerful, and I think people are going to actually hear this. John, you got to do some clips of this if you guys don't.
Yeah, I know. Did you guys consider going over to LASD? Because I had friends on the force there, and they didn't seem to have the same mandate.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, I had actually considered there's quite a few different partners that I took a look at and considered trying to join. The problem that I had, and I kept coming back to, was that a lot of these departments were all carrying out the same general policies. They were all mandating that you submit exemptions and mandating that you participate in testing and all these things. And I don't believe in any of it anymore. And I was like, why am I going to go sign up to go join a police department and represent that I'm going to protect and serve the community while also not protecting and serving the community? I think we owe it to them. We owe it to them to do better, honestly. And I was a little bit discouraged with some of my my colleagues. I really was. I tried to work the busiest assignments I could work. I truly believed in what we did as law enforcement officers, and to see officers shrink when people needed us the most. The citizens of Los Angeles needed us. Our fellow coworkers needed us, and some people rose to that occasion. Janine being one of them, Greg being another. But others, I mean, I can't tell you the conversations I had with command staff, captains and commanders and that kind of stuff, lieutenants. And they're all saying, oh, I don't believe in it, Mike. It's wrong. This is wrong. But then they wouldn't do anything. It's like, okay, well, if you truly believe that it's wrong and you truly believe that what's happening is illegal, maybe you should stand up and let people know. And people deserve to know that there are officers and command staff and people out there that feel the same way and are willing to stand up for what's right. And so to answer your question, John, I didn't feel like there was as many law enforcement people as I thought should have been standing up for what was going on, sir.
Yeah, we saw that a lot, and in California especially. It was just it was ridiculous. We were in OC, so it was a little less intense, but you still had a lot of that. But maybe go down to OC if you guys are still looking for jobs. I don't know if that's better, but it felt a little better. Nicer beaches.
there you go. Good weather.
You're welcome to come to Akron. The weather's not as good, but our city never mandated for police and fire, although I am representing a young firefighter who couldn't get his clinicals done because his bosses would not sign the religious exemption for a Cleveland clinic. And so I have a trial starting October 4th on that. But our police force here, for example, stood up when they said people can't gather at Thanksgiving that first year and said, we're not enforcing that. Good luck, health department.
Yep.
And going to people's houses. So we had a little bit of a different situation in our city, thankfully. But no, but I still have a firefighter who we've got a trial on because of some other interpretations of things. And I was very upset. His class had about 30 members coming through. All of the young ones in that class took it, but for him, to get through their clinicals at the hospitals. All of them, but for him.
Yes.
So I'm just, and his commanders should have supported him and did not, and his union should have supported him and did not.
Yes, sir.
I think we experienced failure across the board of all the systems of protection that we relied on for the last 100 years. Yeah. And when all of them fail except for faith, that definitely, I don't know, there's some insight that can be taken from that. Yeah, we're coming up on an hour.
I know. Let's run over just a little bit, John.
Sure.
I've got a quick question for Mike.
Yes, sir.
I have literally had some of our clients and people, tell me that they felt that took the jab, that ended up feeling ultimately that it was like a sexual assault, like it was like a rape. And I know that seems extreme, but I want to point out Joe Latipo actually analogized this to slavery. He's the Surgeon General of Florida, and I was astounded to see him say that. But he analogized this to slavery, the loss of control of your own body, the masking, the shots, all of that. So I think I worry about those being seen as too extreme, but I wonder, since you actually dealt with sexual assault, do you see some of those comparative elements?
Sir, I absolutely do. Not just with, the taking something into your body, but the feeling of being violated. Mm-hmm. I can't tell you how many friends and coworkers I have who made the decision to get the shot, whether it was for promotion or they're afraid to lose their pension or whatever the reason may be. And I talk to them and they tell me, oh man, I feel different. I can't believe that I did it. I wish I wouldn't have done it. I feel so stupid for having believed that this was something that was, that I was being led in the right direction and I wasn't. And I think there's a real feel of regret amongst a lot of the people who ended up taking the vaccine, and my heart breaks for them. It really does. I mean, you would think that we'd be on, the other side of it, and we'd be angry or upset, and I'm not at all. I think there's a lot of people out there who did this because they thought it was the right thing, and my heart breaks for them. And I have friends and family, all included, sir. So it's a rough topic. It really is. But I pray that they will find peace in the end in their decision, and I hope that somewhere down the road we're able to fix whatever's going on. But that's about all I got to say.
Right. And I think that's a really important observation. The people who did take the shot did it, a lot of them, for what they considered to be the right reasons. They were lied to, and they were victimized in this process. And I have all compassion possible for those that now we know have been injured by these shots and are really struggling because they don't have the supportive medical care that they need, and they're going broke trying to figure out how to treat the ongoing ramifications of this. So,
Warner, if I can just piggyback really quick, and obviously we're not going to get into any names, but we personally know a substantial amount of people that have had adverse reactions. And recently, I have a friend who is waiting for a heart transplant, and they would not allow him to put his name on the list unless he received a booster.
Oh, those have been
So
horrific. Yeah, we've had many of those battles. Yeah, it's
that
horrific.
completely just blew my mind. We're in 2025.
Yeah.
The adverse reaction came from the vaccine related to his heart because he was a healthy law enforcement officer. And now to get a heart transplant, you want him to get a booster? I mean, and where do you go? Like, what does he do? So it's scary.
I personally, that was one of the first kind of stories I covered, was a father who wanted to donate his kidney to his own son, who was 9 years old, and they refused to allow him to do it unless they were all vaccinated. Mm-hmm. There was no reason to do it, but they were going to force it. I would love to see this energy from the ceremony yesterday and all of the vigils for Charlie Kirk. I'd love to see that energy transformed into a more active presence, so that, the next time this hospital tries this, well, how about we just circle that hospital with Christians who shout until the foundations shake, and make them change their damn policy, because that's ridiculous. Yeah. It is ridiculous to do that to a child, to anyone. I mean, your policy is what caused the problem in the first place.
Right. It's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling. That's why honestly, I appreciate you guys still fighting.
Yeah, I will tell you that has worked in a couple of cases, exactly what you're suggesting, John. And I think that's a good idea, to maybe have a rapid reaction network to respond to these horrific situations, because there are a few cases out there that got a ton of publicity. And oh my God, did it bring some changes when they got 300,000 phone calls at the hospital that tied up their lines for a week. I'm thinking of one case in particular. But so I think we have the power, and I think we do need to think, how do we rapidly react to these horrific situations and help these people who really are not in a position. When you're headed toward a transplant, you don't have that much energy usually to develop, a response to this. But we need to be our own antibodies to this damage to the civic body that's occurring here.
Turning Point has received tens of thousands of applications for new chapters. Well, maybe we start there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But I like the idea that you're giving of, this idea that people actually have a direction to respond in. I'll tell you who else is out there that I want to mention to people who are injured. React19.org, Brianne Dressen's group. It's not just hers, it's lots of people, but she founded it. And then, they have been fantastic in this fight, helping people, doing what they can, raising awareness. So I want people to be aware of that. And there's something else I was going to say. I just lost it. So anyway, let's move on.
Can I just add one quick comment about the whole thing? I like the broken truth. Is that okay if I jump in real quick?
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. So with regard to the truth, which I really appreciate the name of this particular platform, Broken Truth. I think that's a problem, is just promulgating the truth, because there's so much I'm blown away by how they just keep repeating these stinking lies over and over and over again. One quick example is this thing about, the again, I hate to use that term vaccine, but the material as in some way being safe and effective. Now, I think Kennedy is trying to push that back a bit, and I think it's starting to work. But the reality is, people need to own their missteps. Like, this whole thing about warp speed or whatever position, whatever the thing is that they're pointing you to say, well, it wasn't that bad. It was, rough days and all that. There's a podcast where Chief Moore admitted during the podcast, and this is embedded in some of my earlier papers, that that particular jab didn't stop transmissions. In fact, didn't even stop people from getting the disease, and yet still they keep pushing this. So I think to the point of developing maybe using Turning Point or some platform to have like one clearinghouse, someplace you can go to. Here are the documents. Here's all the stuff, and they keep repeating these false statements. You can go here and get the true facts about this, including the adverse events. And then, Warner, to your point about litigation, the remedies for people who have been injured, I don't have the answer to that, but certainly looking backward to try to remedy that. I think more significantly moving forward, just to make sure people are equipped to push back against these false statements, because this is not going to stop. It's not.
And that's that's a good idea. And maybe on Freedom Council we should have a public facing database of documents, because certainly internally we have over 250 attorneys that help each other get through these things and understand what's going on out there. Like Comirnaty was not available, and yet all the courts seem to think Comirnaty was available. Well, it wasn't. And in fact, it only had a 24-hour marketing period. Well, that kind of stuff, the attorneys are supporting each other on it, but you're making me think we ought to have a publicly facing list of just some key documents. The other thing, the contract did call with the DOD. This is a DOD contract. It did call for it to be a safe and effective vaccine, but the emergency use authorization does not require safety or efficaciousness. So it says may. That the drug or product may be safe and effective. And the thing that happened is our signals got broken down. VAERS very quickly showed us it wasn't safe. And then by the fall, before the fall of 2021, that Barnstable, Massachusetts study showed it wasn't stopping transmission, so it wasn't effective. So our leadership at every level knew this. And Rochelle Walensky went on television in August of 2021 and said, it did not stop transmission. So why the mandates came down following that admission, I'll never know.
Money and power.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, everyone, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. I wish you all the best with your upcoming cases. Anything else you want to add as we leave?
No, just thank you guys again for having us on, sir.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, I appreciate you both, John and Warner, and Greg, of course. Without you guys, like Mike said, we need a platform. If you can get us out to as many people, just have everyone pray for us, have everyone continue to fight. And we want to be the voices. If you can't fight, we'll fight for you, but just pray for us and help us.
Were you able to get other jobs?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I do police law enforcement training.
Okay, excellent. Good. That's a good job.
Well,
right.
Greg was right at the beginning. He said, he couldn't do his work without people like you who were standing strong in the breach. And our, lawyers are just, we can't do anything if we don't have clients like you. And I know Greg indicated that at the beginning of this, and I think that's exactly right. So thank you guys.
Great. So, all right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. God bless you for the work you're doing.
God bless you guys.
You too.
God bless you.
Take care.
Bye,
I knew as early as February 2020 that I needed to do something.
I recognized that there was a systematic problem and that this was not about hydroxychloroquine, it was something larger.
Fear shut the world down, and people made a lot of money at it as they were killing us.
I was asked to speak at a freedom rally that was set up to discredit my reputation.
Whoever orchestrated this must not have the safety of this nation in mind.
Medicine and politics should be separated. These doctors were handcuffed.
The American public has awakened. We have a new civil rights movement to restore our rights, and we're going to hold them accountable.
It is a natural progression of a man of God or woman of character to see injustice, to seek it out, and then to act upon it.
Do you hear me? We will never lock down again. This is the hill we die on.
Don't miss New American Heroes with attorney Warner Mendenhall and John Davidson, Mondays on BrokenTruth.tv.